August 1st, 1943, 11:15 p.m. The streets of Harlem were on fire. Literally 10,000 people filled the avenues, their rage spilling out in broken windows, overturned police cars, and flames licking at the night sky. The NYPD had lost control. The National Guard was mobilizing. Mayor LaGuardia was preparing for a bloodbath. Then Bumpy Johnson stepped onto the hood of a Cadillac in the middle of 125th Street and did something nobody expected. He stopped it all with one speech. Not with violence, not with threats. With words that cut through chaos like a knife through smoke. Words that saved his community from destroying itself. Words that forced the most powerful white man in New York to answer for his police department's crimes. This is the story of how a Harlem kingpin became a community savior in the span of 7 minutes, and how one phone call changed NYPD history forever. The pressure cooker. To understand what exploded on August 1st, 1943, you need to understand what Harlem was living through. World War I was raging. Black men were being drafted to fight for American freedom overseas while being denied that same freedom at home. They served in segregated units, faced discrimination from their own officers, and when they came home on leave wearing their uniforms with pride, they were still called boy by white cops. Harlem in 1943 was a pressure cooker, overcrowded, underfunded, and over-policed by a NYPD that saw black neighborhoods as enemy territory to occupy, not communities to protect. Police violence was constant. Beatings that never made the papers. Arrests without cause. Harassment that never stopped. And everybody knew that when push came to shove, the badge always won. Bumpy Johnson saw all of it. By 1943, he was 36 years old and already a legend. He'd survived prison, survived wars with Dutch Schultz and Lucky Luciano, survived everything the system threw at him. But more importantly, he'd earned something rare: the trust of Harlem. When Bumpy walked down Lenox Avenue, people nodded, not out of fear, but out of respect. Because Bumpy protected the neighborhood. When cops shook down black businesses, Bumpy made it stop. When slumlords tried to evict families, Bumpy intervened. He was the unofficial mayor of Harlem, and everybody knew it. But even Bumpy couldn't predict what was about to happen. The spark. August 1st, 1943, 7:30 p.m. The Braddock Hotel on 26th Street. A black soldier named Robert Bandy, 26 years old, was home on leave. He stood in the hotel lobby wearing his U.S. Army uniform, the same uniform he'd worn while fighting fascism in Europe. He heard a commotion. A white police officer named James Collins was arresting a black woman named Margie Polite for disorderly conduct. Her crime: she'd argued with the hotel manager about being overcharged. Officer Collins was rough, grabbing Margie by the arm, twisting it behind her back. She cried out in pain. Robert Bandy, who'd spent the last year fighting for democracy abroad, couldn't watch a woman being brutalized by the people sworn to protect her. "Sir, you're hurting her," he said, stepping forward. Officer Collins turned, saw the uniform, didn't care. "Mind your business, boy." "I'm not a boy, I'm a soldier." What happened next changed everything. Officer Collins drew his weapon and shot Robert Bandy in the shoulder, a uniformed American soldier, in a hotel lobby, in front of dozens of witnesses. Robert collapsed, blood spreading across his army jacket. Collins radioed for backup, claiming Bandy had attacked him. A lie. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. The explosion. Within 20 minutes, word had spread through Harlem like wildfire. "They shot a soldier. They shot one of our boys." By 8:00 p.m., a crowd had gathered outside the Braddock Hotel. 50 people, then 100, then 500. By 9:00 p.m., the crowd was a mob, and the mob was moving. What started at the Braddock Hotel spread through Harlem like a tidal wave. Years of rage, years of humiliation, years of injustice. All of it erupted at once. Store windows shattered. Not black-owned businesses. Those were left untouched. But white-owned stores, the ones that charged Harlem residents double. The ones that wouldn't hire black workers, those burned. Police cars were overturned. Officers who ventured into the streets were pelted with bricks, bottles, anything people could throw. The NYPD tried to form lines, push the crowds back, but they were outnumbered 50-1. By 10:00 p.m., Police Commissioner Louis Valentine called Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia with 4 words that changed everything: "We've lost control." LaGuardia, a progressive by reputation, faced an impossible choice: to send in reinforcements with orders to crack skulls or call the National Guard. Either way, people were going to die. He chose the Guard, gave them 90 minutes to mobilize. But here's what the mayor didn't understand: Harlem wasn't rioting because they were criminals. They were rioting because they were tired. Tired of being shot. Tired of being ignored. Tired of watching their sons go to war for a country that treated them like the enemy. Enter the king. 11:15 p.m. Bumpy Johnson stepped out of Small's Paradise, his headquarters on 135th Street. The streets were full of smoke, fire, noise, people running in every direction, sirens wailing in the distance. This wasn't organized. This was pain expressing itself the only way it knew how. Bumpy's lieutenants surrounded him. "Boss, we need to get you out of here. The guard's coming." Bumpy looked at the burning streets, looked at his people destroying their own neighborhood, looked at the police in riot gear waiting for an excuse to shoot. He made a decision. Get me a bullhorn. What? Get me a bullhorn and a car. 5 minutes later, Bumpy Johnson was standing on the hood of a Cadillac in the middle of 125th Street and Lenox Avenue, the heart of Harlem, the epicenter of the chaos. His driver leaned on the horn. One long, sustained blast. People turned, saw who it was, and slowly the noise started to die down. Bumpy raised the bullhorn. "Listen to me." His voice cut through everything, strong, calm, commanding. The crowd quieted. Not completely. Fires were still burning. Glass was still breaking in the distance, but the people near him stopped, turned, listened. The speech that saved Harlem. "I know why you're angry," Bumpy began. "I'm angry too. They shot Robert Bandy for doing what any man would do, protecting a woman. And that cop will probably get a medal while Robert's in the hospital fighting for his life." He paused. "Let that sink in. But look around you. Look at what you're burning. Whose stores are these? Whose homes? Yours. You're burning your neighborhood. And tomorrow morning when the smoke clears, who's gonna pay to rebuild? Not the NIP, not City Hall. You." Voices in the crowd. "They deserve it. They shot one of us." Bumpy nodded. "You're right. They do deserve it. But here's what they want. They want you to burn your own neighborhood so tomorrow they can roll tanks down these streets and say, 'See, they're animals. They need to be controlled.' They want you to give them an excuse." He pointed at the police line 3 blocks away, officers in riot gear waiting. "You see those cops? They're waiting for you to throw one more brick, burn one more store, because when you do, they get to shoot. And when the bodies pile up, they'll blame you. Not the cop who shot Robert. You." Not the crowd was listening now. Really listening. "So here's what we're going to do. You're going to go home. You're going to check on your families. You're going to let me handle this." Someone shouted. "What are you going to do?" Bumpy smiled. "Cold, dangerous. I'm going to call the mayor. And I'm going to tell him that if the cops who caused this aren't gone by tomorrow, next time I won't stop the riot. I'll lead it." The Exodus. 11:52 p.m. The streets were clearing, not because the police ordered it, because Bumpy Johnson did. People were going home. Fires were being put out. By the time the National Guard rolled into Harlem at midnight, there was nothing to suppress. The riot was over. The guard commander radioed the mayor. "Sir, the situation is contained. We don't understand it, but the streets are empty." Mayor LaGuardia sat in his office, confused. 10,000 people had been rioting an hour ago. Now there was nothing but smoke and silence. His phone rang. "Mayor, you have a call. Says his name is Bumpy Johnson." LaGuardia hesitated. He knew the name. Every politician in New York knew the name. But Bumpy Johnson didn't call mayors. Mayors pretended men like Bumpy didn't exist. "Put him through." The call that changed everything. Bumpy's voice came through the line. Calm, almost friendly. "Mr. Mayor, this is Bumpy Johnson. We haven't been formally introduced, but I think you know who I am. Mr. Johnson, I'm aware of your reputation." "Good. Then you know I just did your job for you. I stopped a riot your police couldn't handle. 10,000 people were in those streets, and I sent them home." "You're welcome." LaGuardia bristled. "I don't recall asking for your help. You didn't have to. See, unlike you, I actually live in Harlem. These are my people, and I'm not going to let them destroy themselves because your cops don't know how to act civilized." "Officer Collins has been suspended pending investigation." "Suspended?" Bumpy's voice went cold. "That's not going to cut it. Excuse me, here's what's going to happen, Mr. Mayor. Officer Collins is gone. Not suspended, fired. And every other officer in that precinct who's beaten a black citizen without cause. I have names, 8 of them. They're gone too. You can't demand." "I'm not demanding, I'm informing. Because here's the deal, I stopped this riot. But next time some cop puts his hands on one of my people, I won't stop it. I'll arm it. You think tonight was bad? Tonight was me showing restraint." Silence on the line. "You can't threaten the mayor of New York City." Bumpy laughed. "I'm not threatening you, Mr. Mayor. I'm offering you a solution. You want peace in Harlem. You want your police to be able to patrol without getting bricks thrown at them. Then you clean house. You get rid of the cops who think their badge gives them the right to beat black people. You do that, and I guarantee you won't have another riot. And if I don't, then next time I won't make a phone call. I'll make a statement, and you'll have a war on your hands." The reckoning LaGuardia sat in his office, staring at the phone. He knew Bumpy was right. He knew Collins was dirty. He knew at least half the Harlem precinct was corrupt. But firing cops, especially white cops, at the demand of a black gangster would be political suicide. But so would another riot. "I'll look into it," LaGuardia finally said. "You've got 72 hours, Mr. Mayor. After that, I can't control what happens." The line went dead, August 4th, 1943. 3 days later, the New York Times ran a small story on page 7. 8 nipped officers dismissed following internal review. No details, no names, just gone. Officer James Collins was fired and charged with assault. The charges were later dropped, but he never wore a badge again. The people of Harlem knew who was responsible. Not the mayor, not the NYPD commissioner, Bumpy Johnson. The legacy mayor LaGuardia never publicly acknowledged the phone call, but for the rest of his term he was careful about Harlem, careful about police conduct. Because he understood something that night: Bumpy Johnson had more power in those streets than any politician. And that power came from respect, from loyalty, from being the one person who stood between the community and the system trying to crush it. Years later, when Malcolm X was assassinated in 1965, the NYPD asked Bumpy Johnson to help keep the peace. They didn't call the mayor, they called Bumpy, because they knew who really ran Harlem. Bumpy Johnson died in 1968. At his funeral, thousands lined the streets, not because he was a gangster, but because he was a protector. A man who understood that sometimes the only way to stop violence is to have the courage to stand in the middle of it and say, "Enough." August 1st, 1943. 10,000 people rioted in Harlem because a cop shot a soldier for the crime of wearing his uniform with pride. Bumpy Johnson stopped them with one speech, 7 minutes of words that saved a community from destroying itself. And then he made the most powerful white man in New York answer for the violence his police had caused. That's not just power, that's legacy. The National Guard rolled into Harlem that night expecting to find a war zone. Instead, they found empty streets and a lesson in leadership that no military academy could teach. Real authority doesn't come from a badge or a uniform. It comes from the people. And on August 1st, 1943, the people of Harlem chose to follow the man who had earned their trust. Not through fear, but through protection. Bumpy Johnson didn't stop a riot that night. He stopped a war. And he did it with nothing but his voice and the respect of 10,000 people who knew he would fight for them when nobody else would. That's how you stop 10,000 people with one speech. You remind them that their strength lies not in destruction, but in unity. Not in burning their own neighborhood, but in building it up. Not in giving their enemies an excuse, but in demanding justice instead. And sometimes, if you're lucky, if you've earned it, they listen.